I am 101 years old. They put me in a nursing home. When I was 70 and gave me a wheelchair. Why? My legs still worked back then. It was just that my husband had passed away, and once he was gone, I no longer saw the point of standing up. I let them wheel me everywhere. In just 2 years, that chair made me so weak that I could no longer walk. What I did after that, many people still find hard to believe. I did not just get my legs back, I changed the entire nursing home. They thought rest would save me, but rest almost buried me. I am Evelyn Carter. Thomas and I were together for 47 years. He was a man of hard work. Thomas never sat still. He fixed the roof, did carpentry, and always carried everything for the family by hand. As for me, I worked in the linen department of a county hospital for 34 years. 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, I stood for almost my entire shift. I pushed heavy laundry carts through long, endless corridors. My legs knew nothing but labor. Every afternoon, Thomas and I would walk 5 blocks together to a small grocery store. We would buy a few loaves of bread, some milk or some apples, and then stroll back home. At that time, I had no idea I was training my legs for the future. I simply thought I was living an ordinary life of a worker. I had unintentionally built a foundation of strength from the simplest of habits. I retired at 63. At that time, I was still very healthy and had Thomas by my side. But tragedy struck when I was 68. It was a quiet winter morning. I walked into the kitchen and found Thomas collapsed next to the dining table. He passed away after a sudden stroke. The small radio was still playing his favorite jazz music. The cup of tea he had just poured for me was still steaming on the table. After the funeral, I sat down and I did not truly stand back up. The walk stopped. The cooking stopped. I no longer went out to the porch to enjoy the view. The curtains remained closed. I only stared at the television screen and let the days pass by meaninglessly. Perhaps some of you are doing the same thing. You do not stop living because of old age. You stop because grief makes sitting feel safer. In those 2 years, my legs withered away very quickly. Stairs became my enemy, and the front doorstep looked like a steep cliff. I fell 3 times in just the last 6 months. Once, my daughter found me lying on the kitchen floor, in the exact same spot where I had found Thomas years before. My children called each other for 9 minutes to discuss. Only 9 minutes for them to decide that my life of freedom was over. They said I was no longer safe living at home alone. And so, at age 70, they put me in a nursing home. I have to confess something. When I entered the home at 70, I could still stand firm. I was still strong enough to hold on to the wall and take a few short steps. But there, the wheelchair was always waiting. There was always someone offering to push me. It made everything faster, safer, and seemed kinder. The chair felt so merciful. But mercy can be extremely dangerous when it asks for no effort from your body. Grief often makes comfort feel holy, even when it is quietly stealing your future. Over the next 2 years, from age 70 to 72, I became completely dependent on it. In the morning, they wheeled me to the dining room. At noon, they wheeled me to the hallway. The afternoon was the common room, and the evening was wheeling back to bed. The key point was that I no longer had to choose to move. And that lack of choice was exactly what killed my legs. My thighs became soft, my ankles swelled, and my feet were always ice cold. This happened not because of a strange disease, and not because getting old has to be that way. It happened simply because I sat for too long. Then I met Mabel, a 76-year-old woman who had just moved in. When she first arrived, she could still steady herself against the wall to go to the bathroom. But only 16 months later, I saw 2 orderlies having to carry her. Mabel cried. She did not cry from pain, but from shame. Looking at Mabel, I felt like I was seeing my own bleak future. The feeling inside me suddenly shifted from sadness to terror, and then into a cold rage. I was angry at myself for letting laziness hide behind the mask of care. I decided that if my legs were going to die, they would not die in silence on that chair. I had to act before it was too late.
One night in my quiet room, while everyone was fast asleep, I decided to do something for my legs. That was the first time in 2 years I took the initiative to regain control over my body.
Since I could not yet stand firmly, I began right while sitting in my chair. The first movement was very simple but extremely important. I placed both feet flat on the floor and pressed down as hard as I could. I held that position for a few seconds before relaxing. Then I squeezed my thighs together tightly, held them, and let go. I repeated these movements everywhere, while sitting at meals, while watching television, while waiting for medicine, or even during those restless hours at 3 in the morning. Not a single person around me noticed what I was doing, but on the inside, I could clearly feel myself sending powerful signals back into the muscles that had been asleep for so long. After several weeks of persistence, a slight warmth began to spread through my thighs. My feet gradually lost their lifelessness, and my muscles seemed to be waking up after a long sleep. Sometimes the greatest changes begin with the quietest efforts. After several weeks of persistently activating my muscles while sitting, I decided to take the next step. One morning, I gripped the armrest with both hands and used all my strength to push myself up. That first time, I only held on for exactly 2 seconds before collapsing back down. But I did not give up. The next day, I stood for 4 seconds, then 7, then 12. I began to progress by holding on to the sturdier bed frame. From using both hands, I moved to one hand, and then to using only my fingertips for balance. Finally, I was able to stand firm for a few breaths without holding on to anything at all. In that moment of standing completely independent, I burst into tears. I cried not because of physical pain, but because I realized I had once forgotten the feeling of carrying my own weight. I had forgotten that human dignity lies in legs that know how to stand firm. Once I could stand firmly for a few dozen seconds, I began to challenge myself more. I held onto the bed frame tightly and gently bent my knees. I did not try to sit down too deep. I only lowered myself a few centimeters and then stood back up. Yet my thighs burned immediately and my legs shook violently like an earthquake. There were nights when my knees were so weak they almost buckled. I gripped the bed frame so hard that I even pulled the small rug beneath my feet out of place. No one came to help me at that time, but I continued again the next morning. Older people like us do not need to perform perfectly like the athletes on television. You only need to hold on to a sturdy support like a kitchen counter or the back of a chair and lower yourself very slowly within a small range. These short movements are the best way to rebuild your thigh muscles. This is the muscle group that will help you stand up from a chair, climb stairs, and keep your body from ever collapsing onto the floor again. The final exercise I performed was still based on that familiar bed frame. I started raising my heels up on my toes, holding for a brief moment, then lowering them very slowly. At first, my ankle joints creaked and my calves cramped constantly. I was even afraid that something was about to snap, but then I realized that it was simply the feeling of a forgotten part of my body waking up. People usually only worry about their knees, but almost no one thinks about their calves or ankles. This is a big mistake. When your calves are strong, your ankles become steady. When your ankles are steady, your balance improves and you are less likely to fall. For people my age, a single fall can change the rest of your life forever. If you are standing right now, try holding onto a table or a chair and raise your heels 5 times. If your legs shake, that is exactly what you have been missing all this time. Heel raises help rebuild the lower leg. The lower leg protects the ankle protects the balance, and balance itself protects your independence. You do not need anyone to guide you if your legs are firm enough to walk on your own. After months of training with these 4 movements, I sat on the edge of my bed and set one final challenge for myself. I wanted to stand up without using my hands for support. The first time I failed. The second time I fell back onto the bed. By the 16th attempt, the chair still felt like it was swallowing me whole. But on the 17th try, with my entire body shaking, drenched in sweat, and my jaw clenched tight, I stood firm. That night, I walked to the bathroom by myself with slow, small steps, but I was completely independent. An orderly saw me standing at the sink and asked in astonishment how I had gotten there. I looked into the mirror and replied that I got there on my own two legs. The most miraculous thing was not just that I had grown stronger, but that I did it right there in the nursing home. I had no trainer, no modern gym, only persistence and iron will. I walked away from that wheelchair using only the strength I had left within me. Once my legs were strong again, I began walking every day along the hallway. However, I soon realized a truth that most people overlook. Walking is a good habit, but walking on legs that are too weak causes your joints to bear weight incorrectly. Trying to walk when your muscles lack the strength is like asking a cracked chair to hold even more weight. I watched people my age trying to walk with trembling knees and ankles tilting inward. They mistakenly believed that just walking more was enough. In reality, walking can never replace the foundational strength of your muscles. You must have strong legs first, and then think about walking later. When your muscle groups are firm, every step you take truly builds your health instead of wearing down your joints. Remember this, do not rush out to walk when your body is not yet ready to support itself. People around me began to notice as they saw me practicing every morning. Ruth, my 79-year-old roommate, had been unable to stand without a walker for 3 years. She watched me holding onto the chair, doing small knee bends, and curiously asked what I was doing. I looked her straight in the eyes and said that I was not going to disappear in this chair. She could join me or sit there and watch me leave it. After just 1 week, 3 people joined me. After 4 months, that number was 22. After nearly a year, more than 30 residents aged 71 to 96 created an unbelievable sight every morning at 7 a.m. Together, we held onto chairs, raised our heels, and counted the reps for each other, even though our legs were still trembling. When the staff worried that someone might fall, I told them that they were already falling. They fall a little every day in those very wheelchairs when no one asks their legs to work anymore. Among them was Lillian, a 90-year-old woman who had not been able to walk into the dining room on her own for nearly a year and a half. But one Monday morning, Lillian suddenly appeared at the doorway without a walker or anyone to guide her. The entire large dining room fell into a strange silence. Then one person started clapping, and soon after everyone stood up and broke into thunderous applause. Lillian stood there, clinging to nothing but her own body, and she burst into tears. We cried with her. In that moment, I understood that this was no longer just about exercising our legs. It was a journey of reclaiming human dignity. We chose to stand up instead of surrendering to fate. I am now 101 years old. Every morning I still persistently do 4 things: press my feet, squeeze my thighs, bend my knees, and raise my heels. I do not do this just for fun or exercise, but to remind my legs that they still belong to me. I challenge you to perform these 4 movements every day for 30 days, and then tell me if your legs have not changed. You do not need money. You do not need machines or fancy gyms. All you need is a chair, a sturdy support, and a difficult decision to stop choosing the easy way out. I know you are sitting there very comfortably, but be careful, that very comfort almost took my legs away. Do not confuse ease with safety. Right now, as this video is about to end, press your feet firmly into the floor, squeeze your thighs together, and stand up straight if you can. Raise your heels 5 times. That is the first day of your journey. They once thought they were protecting me by letting me sit still, but I protected myself by never stopping my movement. Stand up, my dear friend, while your legs still remember how to do it.